Welcome to the April Fool's Day meeting of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. Welcome to those of you joining on the internets. Glad to have you along, and if you've downloaded this and watched it later, glad you could do that too. I'll just start. You'll notice that the projector is a bit different from previous meetings on two fronts. One, it's smaller, it's down to the front. Seems to be a problem with the projector, and two, it's in focus. So hopefully the slides, although they'll be smaller, they'll be clearer. So let's all hope that goes. And to the people who are listening, I apologize. I will be turning around quite frequently, and so will the other speakers. Again, because of the projector problems upstairs, the dais screen isn't working, so we'll have to turn around to negotiate the slides. And for those of you who are speaking, please make sure that when you are talking and turning, that you still project into the microphone as much as possible. So let's get underway. Apparently, we're all doomed in the next couple of days, hours, minutes. As you can see, the sun has unexpectedly swelled to a red giant. It's engulfed Mercury and Venus already, so that means no transit of Mercury in May. Summer vacation starts early. Go out and enjoy it while you still can, because we're all dead. There we go. We're all stardust.
This has been across the internet today.
Yes, it's been making the rounds. I won't read it out, but suffice it to say, as you can tell, it's an April Fool's joke, and it's like Snoop Vision with YouTube today. All right, so we'll just get right into it then. It begins, we'll have the initial introductions. They'll not just be me, but we'll have some initial introductions. Then we have Al Scott and Dave Chisholm, their usual topics. Then we have Jim Thompson coming up and talking to us about his trip to the Guan Sheng Optical Tour, which is an observatory in Taiwan. So today's meeting is about trips. We have the observations, then the break, and then followed by part 2 of Raymond Dubois and Pierre Martin's trip down to Texas for the Geminids, followed by the announcements and the door prizes. I'd just like to say welcome to the 2 new members for the last month, Ingrid Debuda and Luc Mougeot. Welcome. Let's all make them feel welcome. Again, as I always say, I hope you find the organization as rewarding intellectually as I have over the last couple of years. Now, for a bit of sad news, unfortunately, Brian is going to talk to this.
All right, thanks, Roman. Well, good evening, everybody. It's never a pleasant thing to have to say goodbye to a fellow member, especially someone who's given so much of himself for the good of the center. But that's what we have to do here this evening for Al Seaman, who died on Easter Sunday and was buried by his family earlier today. A number of us went to the funeral home last evening to meet with the family and just to be there with just a show of presence from the RASC to let the family know how much Al was appreciated. Al was an engineer and a scientist who spent his career working on cutting-edge radar development, telecommunications research, and other aerospace projects. He loved nature and had many interests and hobbies, including genealogy, photography, geocaching, and exploring Canada's great outdoors and waterways. Al worked tirelessly with the Mississippi River Watchers in defense of his favorite river. If we go on to the next slide there, please. We see him here standing with Doug Loama and Stephen Norse and his wife Marie at one of the annual dinners. Most of us, of course, knew Al Seaman best as a fellow member of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, and he joined our centre here in 1997 and immediately involved himself in the centre's social and technical activities. It was always a delight to see him with his wife Marie at the annual dinner and other events. One of the technical projects Al got involved with was our Millennial SmartScope project, Chris. He was there from its inception and made all the arrangements to allow us to build it at the protected site at the Communications Research Center at Shirley's Bay. So he was instrumental in all early design decisions, the construction, and the setup. There he is with Chris there right now. Most people probably remember Al best from his time as director of our Fred Lossing Observatory from 1998 to 2009. No one could ever figure out how such a young guy found the energy to keep our main observing facility running so well and encourage members to get out and use it. When I ran the astronomy program at the Mill of Kintail from 2001 to 2004, Al would go on ahead to open up the 16-inch telescope and give my students some of their first views of the celestial objects through a large telescope, so that was always very much appreciated. Finally, in recognition of his service to the RASC, Al was presented with a service award by the Ottawa Centre in 2007 and by RASC National Society in 2009. And these are really significant events. And I'd like to close by reading from the citation for his National Service Award. Al Seaman has shown superior dedication for his volunteer duties with the Ottawa Centre RASC. Over a period of more than 10 years, Al served as director of our Fred Lossing Observatory, as an important member of the SmartScope team, helped pioneer the creation of our centre website, helped manage our membership and mailing lists on the internal side, and has been a very frequent traveller to RASC General Assembly, so he was very active all the way through. Al's consistent dedication of his time and efforts in managing our assets has given our council an anchor to further advance our centre, so words really well spoken. And as we go to the last slide, I'll just say that on a personal note, I worked with Al's, one of his sons, Duncan, and also with Duncan's wife, Marcia. They didn't know each other when they first started working at D&D when I was there. And just as I say, on a personal note, it was very nice for me to be able to be there with them at the funeral home last night. So if you care to, I would invite you to please stand and maybe give a round of applause to a good friend and a dedicated fellow astronomy enthusiast. So for Al Seaman.
Thanks, Brian. I was also asked to convey that for those of you who don't know, Rolf Meyer is currently in hospital battling a brain tumor. So Linda said that he would appreciate visits and would like to know that everyone's thinking about him. So if you can visit him, or if you can't, just let Linda know that Rolf's in your thoughts. Moving on. Oh, yes. And now I think we can, it's with great pleasure that I announce a long overdue award. I mean, I know you can see it here, but I'm going to say it anyway. It was recently announced that Chris would be receiving the service award from the RASC. He will be officially presented at the GA in London, but I think we can all agree that this award is long overdue, and certainly more than well deserved. Without Chris, the meetings simply wouldn't function. And I think I can't imagine our meetings without Chris. And he's been doing it since I've been a member, and I can only hope that he'll continue doing so. But congratulations, Chris. It's well deserved. I think you deserve a very big round of applause. Chris, come on up here. Come on up here for a second. Do you have just so everyone sees your face? You don't often get up to the podium. So everybody, this is Chris.
I'm usually hiding back in the AV booth.
More like so. Just give a brief rundown. When did you join the center, and how did you start with the meetings? How did you start the technical part of the meetings?
That was, joined in '97. And at that time, all presentations were done with a slide projector. And one magic day, probably I know when it is, in year 2000, someone arrived with a computer and made a first PowerPoint presentation, which is nice. That let people know that they could do it. So the next meeting, people arrived with PowerPoints. There was no computer, no planning, and it was, oh shit, what are we gonna do now? And I had a laptop in my trunk. I'm still at it.
Great.
So that's from 16 years ago.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks. Chris Taran, everybody, Renaissance man. All right. Seriously though, Chris, thank you very much for your continuing contribution to the Ottawa Centre. Like I said, meetings just wouldn't function and wouldn't be the same without you. All right. So members in the news, we have someone. This is by Al Scott, who put in a letter to the editor to, which newspaper was this again? Sorry, what? Our prior chronicle regarding light pollution and how we can go about diminishing its effects. Yes? Oh. All right. Is he? No, he's not. Anyway, Al, when you come down, you can give a brief talk on this. I just want to make one more note. This slide, if you can see down here, it says, "We know this is fuzzy." Now, ironically, this was meant to be with the big projector. So it's not fuzzy. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. More than one person voiced their concern at the quality of the projections or the quality of the images that were being projected onto the screen using the main projector. And I just wanted to let you know that we were aware of it and we were dealing with it. There's a member here who was particularly active in addressing this with the museum. And of course, it seemed rather unfair that people would put so many hours into truly spectacular images and then have them kind of fuzzy and ruined once they got projected. So it is an issue that we are aware of. We are working with the museum, or one member, I should say, is working particularly closely with the museum to try to get it rectified. So with any luck, it should be, this thing should be rectified by the May meeting. From what I understand, there's to be a refit or repair of the projector, which may or may not be the reason it's not working today, but we'll just leave that to one side. So hopefully by May, we'll have nice, clear images on the main projector. So again, it's an issue we've taken on board and we've tackled. And next is Al Scott with the 10-minute astronomy news. Al, if you want to come on down, and if you want to also give a quick talk about your about the op-ed piece.
Good evening, everybody. So, I'll talk a little bit about my letter to the editor. I've been on a bit of a campaign through my association with the RASC and astronomy in general. I'm always interested in improving the night sky quality, and I moved to Arnprior a few years ago, and I was dismayed at the level of light pollution dominating the night sky there. So I decided to embark on a campaign, writing letters to the local paper, just trying to raise awareness. Because I think the main issue in a lot of these cases is that people don't realize the impact of unshielded lights on the night sky. They just don't think about it. Everyone has decorative carriage lights that shine up into the sky, and nobody shields them. Businesses put unshielded wall packs to illuminate their parking lots because they're afraid of litigation. Nobody thinks to just put a shield on these things. So mainly it's been an educational campaign. I've also tried to do some research onto town bylaws. There are zoning requirements that you can't shine lights into other people's property, but they're not enforced unless someone complains. In these types of things, if you want people to make changes, I think you need a bit of a carrot and a stick approach. So the carrot, I know in Arnprior they have a business improvement fund where the town will pay 50% of the cost of upgrading lights. So I'm just trying to make people aware of these options and the impacts that they may be unknowingly having on the environment. I've been going around to local businesses and contacting them and notifying them, and I've got the RASC Ottawa to commit to putting in a full-page advertisement in the local paper lauding businesses which change their lights over to dark sky compliant. So I'm hopeful that this will result in improvements. So far, we haven't seen much in the lighting improvement, but I have had people that I know stopping me and saying, hey, I saw your letter in the paper, that's an interesting thing, something they hadn't thought about. So it's a slow process and agonizing, but hopefully in the end, in the long term, it will lead to darker skies. So on to the news. So, first one is about supernova caught in the act. Astronomers have captured the earliest minutes of two exploding stars, and for the first time have seen the initial shock wave generated by a star's collapsing core, the shock wave from that core breaking out of the surface of the star in the visible. A team of astronomers analyzed light captured by the Kepler Space Telescope. The Kepler Space Telescope is staring at a portion of the sky which is dense with stars and taking photometry, measuring the brightness of all these stars basically once a minute, as long as it can, to try to detect transiting planets that move in front of the stars. Well, these astronomers thought, hey, there's probably galaxies in this field, and I wonder if we could see a supernova when it happens. So there's about 500 galaxies in the field of Kepler that they were able to look through, and over a 3-year period, 2 of them had type 2 supernovae in those galaxies. And they went back through the data, and sure enough, for the first time, and you can see it here, the light curve of the galaxy is going along like this, and the pixel suddenly goes bang! And then it drops down, and then you have the characteristic supernova light curve, which is what we typically associate with a supernova. This is what we see when we see a supernova several days after its initial breakout. So up until this discovery, no one had seen this. The actual moment where the energy, 10% of the mass of the star, is converted into neutrinos. These neutrinos burst through the star, explode out through the surface, and a burst of light is created. And then what happens is that the remnant of the star starts expanding out and is heated by the energetic radioactive nuclei that were created at the initial collapse. But this here is the actual explosion being seen over 20 minutes on a star that's the size of our inner solar system. Super red giant. The first star was nearly 300 times the size of our sun and 700 million light years away. The second that they saw was 500 times the sun and 1.2 billion light years away. Such a rare event happens only once every 100 years in a typical galaxy. So it's really a rare event to see the first 20 seconds of one of these very rare explosions. And you can see this is the scale here is the brightness in terms of solar brightnesses. So this star was already very bright, effectively 20,000 times the brightness of the sun, because of its great size. It spikes up to 130 million times the brightness of the sun in 20 minutes. Then it comes back down, and then the expanding supernova comes up, and eventually the supernova remnant, the expanding nebula, is 1 million times or billion times the brightness of the sun. The 2 explosions that were seen, only one of them had this spike observed. The other one they suspect was too dust enshrouded to be able to see the light from that initial breakout. Both explosions are about the same energy, but it was really an interesting discovery and something very rare that we wouldn't actually think you might see something. It was kind of a serendipitous discovery in the Kepler data series, not what Kepler was meant to originally discover. My next story is the gravitational wave discovery. LIGO is the Laser Interferometer Gravity Wave Observatory. Consists of 2 facilities. They're L-shaped facilities where each arm of the interferometer is on an L, and there's a laser that shoots down each of these arms, and the arms are 4 kilometers long. One of the facilities is near Washington, and the other is in Louisiana. At 5:51 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 14th, 2015, both labs caught the gravitational wave signature of 2 colliding black holes shortly after both facilities were turned on following a 5-year upgrade. The LIGO project itself is a $620 million mega science project, and it had operated for 8 years between 2002 and 2010 and had detected nothing. And yet they went ahead with a $200 million upgrade, hoping to detect something. A series of gravitational waves from a distant galaxy first passed through the Livingston detector. Then, just 7 milliseconds later, it passed through the detector in Hanford. Both instruments shoot infrared lasers through 4-kilometer-long arms of near-perfect vacuum. The laser light reflects off ultra-pure, super-polished, and seismically isolated quartz mirrors. The passing gravitational waves slightly altered the path lengths in the arms of both detectors by about 1,000th the width of a proton. That slight change created this signal. And you can see this is time in seconds. So this happened over about 1/10 of a second, or 15 milliseconds, roughly speaking. But you can see how well they match the predictions from general relativity. And you can see how well they match each other. And this is what drives the confidence in this result being real. Based on the amplitude of the signal, the height of the waves, the team members estimate that the colliding black holes had the masses of 36 and 29 suns respectively. So these are large black holes with each from a single large star, probably. And they were probably in a binary pair, and they collided into each other. Milliseconds before they merged, these behemoths spun around each other at nearly the speed of light. LIGO watched all three predicted phases of the collision: the black hole's death spiral and ensuing merger, as well as the ringing of the merged object as it settled down into its new form. The merged black hole appears to contain about 62 solar masses, so it's short 3 solar masses from the mass of its constituents. And they believe that lost mass was carried away in the energy of the gravitational waves that came across the universe to stretch these interferometers by 1,000th the width of a proton. When you think about that, it's a very small stretching that we're detecting. That the effect of this on the Milky Way galaxy was basically to stretch the galaxy by about the width of your thumb. The object that did this was about somewhere between 700 and 1.6 billion light years away. They've only got 2 points to triangulate from, so they're not exactly sure where the target galaxy was. You can't triangulate very well with only 2 points. You find arcs of space where they could happen. So here you can see the simulation of what was happening. The black holes are spiraling in, getting closer and closer, faster and faster. They merge. The merged object rings a little bit, and then it settles into a spherical black hole. Here's the velocity as a fraction of the speed of light, going up to over half the speed of light, and the separation in solar radii from about 4 down to 1 and then 0 at the moment of merger. So very cool. Just to give you an idea of how this was done, this is a schematic of the LIGO interferometer. What happens is that light comes out of the laser, goes through a beam splitter, and then the light is split by the beam splitter down the 2 different arms of the interferometer. Each beam bounces between 2 mirrors several times, and the mirror allows a fraction of the light through. When the 2 beams meet back at the beam splitter, they interfere, and the interference pattern can be detected on a detector. If a gravitational wave passes through, it'll warp space-time and change the length of the arms differentially. What that'll mean is that the light path in this 4 kilometers, because it's bouncing so many times, it actually folds the light out into several, about 1,000 kilometers, I believe, of total path length, and the phase change is then detected at the detector. The system has not got to its final sensitivity yet. They're hoping to double the sensitivity again, and what this will do is it'll allow the facility to explore greater distances to detect more black hole mergers. Thinking about this, though, the system is creating a prodigious amount of data every day. It has to have milliseconds precision, sub-millisecond precision, and so it's actually producing rate at a prodigious rate of more than a terabyte a day. Yet the possibility that this discovery was noise was estimated to be less than 1 in 3.5 million, or 5.1 sigma in statistical speak. Here's a picture of some of the hardware. To be able to measure these distortions, they have to have motionless mirrors. They have to isolate the mirrors in the interferometer from vibrations in the earth, from seismic waves, from people walking in the laboratories, from trucks driving down the road. So what they do is there's an active seismic isolation system. This is basically like a big noise-canceling headphone system. Sense ground movements, then deliberately perform counter movements to eliminate them. The mirrors are actually hanging below this device on a pendulum. It's actually a quad pendulum. A 4-stage pendulum called a quad. LIGO's test masses, or mirrors, are suspended at the end of 4 pendulums by 0.4 millimeter thick fused silica glass fibers. The main chain side faces the laser beam, while there's a reaction mass on the back which keeps the test mass steady from noise not associated with sources from space. Each mirror weighs 40 kilograms, so it's got a lot of inertia as well, which helps it to not vibrate. But the fact is that just the air hitting this mirror would create distortion, so it's got to have a very good vacuum. It has one of the largest, purest sustained vacuums on Earth. In volume, it's only surpassed by the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. The atmospheric pressure inside the vacuum tubes is 1/trillionth that of air pressure at sea level. LIGO's infrared laser produces 200 watts of light at about 1 micron wavelength and is the most stable ever made to produce light at this wavelength. LIGO's mirrors are the highest quality available, both in material and shape. Made of very pure fused silica glass, they just absorb 1 in 3 million photons that hits them. And that's so that the heating of the mirrors from the laser beam and all the bounces of the laser beam doesn't distort them. The mirrors are polished so precisely that the error in the surface figure is measured in atoms. This is critical because with all the reflections, each laser travels about 1,120 kilometers before interfering with its partner at the photodetector. So that's why it costs $620 million. But the fact is they actually have been able to detect distortions from gravity waves predicted by Einstein to less than 1,000th the width of a proton. And to know that this is because of 2 black holes somewhere around 1 billion light years away merging. So this is a new type of astronomical observatory that we're going to have a lot more data to explore our universe with in the future. So very interesting discovery, probably a Nobel Prize coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. I guess if 2 black holes were colliding, that would give Matthew McConaughey a harder time. All right. So next up we have Dave Chisholm and the Skies for April. And it does say April this time.
Okay, good. Okay, folks, just so I'm not turning away from the mics, maybe Chris will get you to advance the slides for me. So go to the first slide, please. Here's the moon phases for this month. Full moon is April the 22nd, and I guess the 7th of April is our best viewing day. And coincidentally, next slide. This is thanks to Andrew Brown for bringing this to my attention. The Comet 67P, which is the Rosetta mission comet, will be passing through the Leo triplet on or around April 7th. Given the dark skies and hopefully clear skies, maybe we'll be able to catch that. Next slide. As I noted, the full moon is exactly the same time as the large meteor shower, so it will be difficult to see, but you may get to see a few of those meteors. Sorry. Next one, Mercury. Okay, it'll be visible in the early evening sky towards the mid-month, and April 18th is the greatest eastern elongation of 19.9 degrees. That'll be your best time to see it just after sunset. Next slide. Venus is not visible at all this month, and Mars is visible in the late evening towards midnight, starting at the start of the month. Jupiter. Jupiter is visible all month, and certainly I've seen it in the skies earlier this week when it was nice and clear, very, very clear. Saturn is visible in the late evening, starting on the 1st at almost 1 o'clock in the morning, and moving towards a more reasonable time of 11 o'clock on the 30th. Uranus is not visible at all this month, and Neptune is not visible the first part of the month. The International Space Station, the best viewing date is April the 11th, and it rises 10 degrees
and sets at 73 degrees, almost overhead. When we go to the next slide, you'll see its path across the sky there. And I leave you with a very dedicated astronomer counting the stars. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Can I interject with a thought that I meant to prompt you and Dave to insert into this talk?
Sure.
It's an event next month. It's going to be almost too late to tell people about it.
Chris, come up to the mic so everyone can hear.
I meant to prompt Roman and Dave to insert a thought into the skies this month, in that we have a significant event coming up next month, and it happens only a few days after our monthly meeting, so hearing about it at the meeting may make it a little too late. We have a rather rare transit of Mercury. Now, of course, if today's red giant swallowed up Mercury, it won't happen, but it's a daytime event. I believe it is May 9th, and I think our meeting is May 6th. So I'm hoping that at May 6th we can have a brief talk or a bit more detail about it, but it's something to potentially, sorry?
It's in the slides already for me.
Fantastic, but it's something I think people should be putting in their calendar, hoping for clear skies as a daytime event. It is a really a rather rare occasion. The last one here was 2006.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you. All right, so we'll move right along to Jim Thompson and his visit to the GSO.
All right, evening everyone. I'm going to just give you a brief overview of the fortunate tour that I had of the GSO facility. It's actually a factory for making astronomical equipment. Okay, good. So we'll start off with, well, who exactly is GSO? Some of you may have heard of them, some of you may not. They're an OEM manufacturer of astronomical equipment. They're located in Taiwan. They make primarily telescopes, but they also make eyepieces, diagonals, and other optics. You may, if you own Meade, Celestron, or Orion products, you may actually have something that is made by GSO and not even know it, because GSO is one of the primary manufacturers for those larger companies. They're relatively young, but they are getting to be fairly well known for their high level of quality. So this is just a few images of what they make. Example of a Newtonian, Barlow. Those are diagonals for Newtonians. They have a machining factory, so they make focusers, eyepieces. That's a 10-inch Ritchie-Chrétien. Actually, I have one of those at home. Mirror diagonals, large Dobsonians, red dot finders, pretty much everything that you could want. And then probably their flagship is large truss tube Ritchie-Chrétien telescopes, which is a fairly new product for them. So why was I in Taiwan? Well, I'm an engineer working for an aerospace / defense company, and I tend to travel around the world a fair amount because most of our business is international. And I was in Asia for about 2 weeks with a couple of days in Taiwan, and it provided a perfect opportunity to try to pay a visit to this company. Luckily, a friend of mine, Rock Mallon, who owns Mallincam here in Ottawa, he sells GSO-made products under the Mallincam name, and so he was kind of my shoehorn to get in to pay them a visit. So a few facts about Taiwan, if you didn't know anything about it. It's an island off the coast of China, right here. They believe that they're a sovereign nation, the Republic of China. China thinks that they're part of China. So there's still a lot of conflict there. That's one of the reasons the defense companies like my own pays them a visit. But they are positioned in a fairly good spot for international trade between Japan, Korea, and then the southern part of Asia. The island is about 36,000 square kilometers with a population of 23.5 million, about 2/3 of Canada's population. So that makes their population density quite a lot more than ours, about 200 times the population density. And their economy is actually about the same size as ours. They have about 2/3 the GDP, but per capita they have about the same production rate and wealth that Canada does. So, small country, but equal sized player on the world stage. And the equivalent stats I just put in the corner here if you want to compare numbers. So the trip started with a drive from the hotel in Taipei. The factory was actually in a town kind of out in the country, and it was about a 75-minute drive away, and the easiest way to get there was to hire a car, which cost about $160 Canadian for a round trip. There is public transit, but because I had meetings in the afternoon, it was much quicker to just hire a car. So over the course of the drive, I was very impressed by how modern a country it is. I've been to other countries in Asia where that's not the case, but they have very modern infrastructure. Like that was a tunnel there on the major highway. They have power distribution systems, wiring all over the country, and it's a fairly mountainous country, so it was pretty impressive from an engineering standpoint. And yet they still have countryside. So like these scenes here, those are all rice fields intermingled amongst the suburbs and the city. So it was a very interesting and very beautiful place, I thought, to visit. Here's an idea of what kind of a urban area it looks like. And it kind of cracked me up. About every 2 blocks, there's a 7-Eleven. When I asked about it, the driver was very surprised to know that 7-Eleven isn't really all that popular in North America. They're around, but nothing like in Taiwan. They're so popular there that they even have their own bank, the Bank of 7-Eleven. Yeah, so I found that pretty amusing. Moving on to the factory. At the time that I visited, they were actually split into 4 separate locations, and I didn't know this until I arrived. They have an assembly factory, which is where I initially arrived, an optics factory, a machining factory, and then their administrative office. And at the same time that I was there, they were in the process of building an entirely new facility with the intention of combining those 4 locations into one location. So what I pulled up to was kind of like a tumble-down shack, to put it bluntly, kind of in the outskirts of a small town. The driver thought that maybe we were in the wrong place because there was no signage. We had to kind of walk up and knock on the door and say, "Oh yeah, this is the right place." And then once you went inside, it was a factory. It was what you would expect. So I was lucky enough to see the assembly facility, the optics facility, and the new building construction site. I was allowed to take pictures of most things, but not the assembly area, because all the scopes that were on the factory floor at the time were for customers. So there was some Newtonians there for Mead, and a number of Dobsonians for Orion. I think they said the order was. So I couldn't take any photos of that. So the first place that I was able to take pictures was the optics factory. And the main square footage is grinding. Almost probably 80% of the factory is grinding. And this gives you an idea of what the one of the wings of grinding looks like. So these are all microprocessor controlled grinding tables. Each has either 3 or 4 pits per section. And I'll give you a close-up here. So these are for grinding primary mirrors for either Ritchie-Chrétiens or Newtonians. So they have the spindle on the top that's able to spin, and they can adjust its position off-center. They have a blank that has the shape that they want to achieve, and then the mirror blank and the holder goes on top of that. So that all flips with the glass side down onto the blank. Now this is a close-up of one of the, they have 2 different ways of polishing the glass. There's a traditional way using a slurry, and they change the grit in the slurry depending on how quickly they want to remove material. And this is a new way that they're researching. Each of these little discs is embedded with industrial-grade diamond, and the shape of the mirror is the shape of the underlying blank. And they're experimenting with this technique because it's much more durable. This blank will last for many more mirrors, but it's obviously a lot more expensive. So they're kind of trying new technology to try to improve their methods. This is an example of a primary mirror grinding station that's actively running. So I guess the advantage for them, and maybe the reason why the costs are low compared to something made in North America, is for this whole room, if I can back up successfully here. So this one room, it had about 20 stations, grinding stations, and there's only one operator. And it's all, once it's pre-programmed, the machines run, and the operator just has to periodically check to see how far it is along in the grinding process, and at different stages they put it on a laser interferometer table to see if they are close to the design shape or not. So it's a very cost-effective setup that they have. So that's all the slurry type, and I didn't really quite understand the way he explained it because his English wasn't great, but there's 2 types of slurry material that they use. There's this brownish liquid. So it cools, lubricates, and also carries the grit. And then there's this gray material, which is maybe a bit more traditional to the people who polish mirrors by hand. This particular station was polishing large secondary mirrors for their large Dobsonians. You can kind of make out the elliptical shapes here. So this...
You're using cerium in the polishing?
I don't know. He said what it was, but like I said, I didn't really understand what he said. You're lucky I walked away with as much as I did. But I believe it's like a silica-based, like maybe carborundum or something, I don't know. But in this case, it's hard to tell because it's not a video, and afterthought I should have taken a video, but so this is spinning, and this is spinning. So the 2 are kind of spinning on an orbit. It's kind of hard to visualize, but that's how they make, these are all being made flat. So just those 2 things spinning relative to each other is how they achieve that. Oh, and you can probably tell, or maybe not, but this gray material and the orangish brown material, it's everywhere. On the floor, on the ceilings, on the walls, it coats everything. Even though it looks like it's mostly contained in the bin, it's not. It's everywhere. So not what you would call a clean. You would expect a clean facility that makes optics, but it's far from clean. At least not this area. So the next area I went into was kind of their second operations. So there was lots of storage, obviously. These are all, I believe these were blanks. These haven't been polished yet. Oh, no, these were polished, actually, sorry. They have a protective cover on them, the plastic cover. So yeah, these were all polished. So these are all ready to now go into the mirroring process before they go over to the assembly facility. So these, they look mostly like 8-inch, which is the most popular, but I think there's some 10-inch ones on the bottom as well. And looks like some 6 inches over on the end there. So it's a very busy facility, lots of product moving through, very busy. This is a close-up of an unpolished blank. It's a 24-inch quartz glass blank to make a Ritchie-Chrétien telescope. They haven't made a 24-inch yet. I think they were waiting until they had moved everything into the new facility before they attempted this, because it's something that they haven't done anything this big before. So it was it's kind of interesting to see that they're pushing the technology. And this is one of the laser interferometer work tables, one of the ones that's on the shop floor. So this is what the operators would be using. There is another area that was more of a final QA that I wasn't allowed to take pictures of because there was a customer's product in there. But this is, once they had a polished blank, you can see some here. You would put them up on the target, and actually it's a mirror there now, but they'd put them up here and shine the laser, and the reflected laser beam, they look at the interference pattern to see if there was any distortion in the shape, if it met the target shape. This is the cleaning area. So this is ultrasonic cleaning vats. Once all the polishing is done, everything would go into the vats to be cleaned thoroughly. Don't want any finger smudges or anything, as well as all of the grinding material to be removed. And then after it's cleaned and dried, it would go into their vapor deposition coating chamber. So this is where the reflective coating would be applied to the glass. They had a run going, so I wasn't able to see inside the machine, but basically they'd open this big door, and there'd be shelves inside with this material that be coated would go in, and it would be closed, put under a vacuum, and then the material they want to coat would be ionized and sputtered onto the surface, very fine layers. So pretty neat, high technology. Traditionally very expensive, but now as it's becoming more prevalent, it's getting more affordable. So the new factory facility, the owner was very keen to show it to me because he's very proud of how his company is doing, moving from these little shacks to this brand new facility. So it was mostly completed. They were hoping to be moved in before Christmas. It looked like they were probably well on their way of being able to achieve that. So this is just a view from what is going to be the lobby. They like a lot of marble in Taiwan. So very kind of flashy entrance. This is all the administrative offices, or will be. This is the factory floor on the ground floor. So this is where all the main assembly work and packing would be done. And then there's 4 stories of just all open factory space. This is the roof of the building. The owner wanted to show me the roof because he has a plan of building a 1-meter Ritchie-Chrétien to put on the roof of the building to be open to the public. So this is kind of a vision of his. It's kind of interesting to see a businessman who is also actually an amateur astronomer, so that was kind of neat. So this is a more recent picture. This is from around December. So they're moved in at this point, and they got the grass. The grass is in, so that's a good sign that things are open for business. So in summary, I feel really fortunate that with my knowing rock, I was able to get an opportunity to visit this company because they don't normally give tours to people. They also do a lot of defense-related work. Right now, an area that he couldn't show me, they're building a telescope to go on a satellite for their defense department. And it's kind of funny, he said all of the profit that they make on the commercial stuff for a whole year was less than that one defense contract. So he's kind of not sure the direction of the company yet based on that, but hopefully he will continue to make us some high quality astronomical products. So really nice guy, he has a great name. And I'm very happy to have had an opportunity to visit the facility. It's interesting to see how they actually make these things. Some acknowledgements. I'd like to thank Jim. I doubt he's watching, but I'd like to thank him for his kindness and hospitality while I was there. I'd like to thank Rock for helping me to make the visit happen. Shireen Wei, who was our agent, the company I work for is agent in Taiwan. She did all the legwork of getting the driver lined up and arranging the time to visit with Jim. So she did all that for me, and I thank her for that. And finally, I'd like to thank the company I work for, Davis Engineering, for paying for my flight to Asia. Because if he hadn't, I probably wouldn't have gone. So yeah, that's it. I don't know if there's any questions about that.
Where did the blanks come from?
The blanks are made in, I believe they originally came from Japan up till a couple of years ago, but then the prices that are getting pushed lower because now there's a lot of suppliers of telescopes in China, mainland China. So to be competitive, they now have to get their glass from China. So all of the glass that I saw on the floor is all from China. And I had to laugh, they have the same quality problems that we have with international suppliers. Being a North American company dealing with international suppliers, they're an Asian company dealing with Chinese suppliers, and they're having similar quality issues. So it was kind of interesting. Any other questions? I can't see anybody, so you'll have to speak up.
What were the working conditions like in the factory? Were people, did you feel people were safe?
Yes. Taiwan is a very modern society. They have very much the same rules that we have with respect to health and safety in the workplace. So even though the grinding floor was dirty, they all had safety gear on. They all were had ample access to fresh air and to clean facilities to eat their lunch and all that. It was like a modern factory. It just looked dirty because it was a dirty job. Like our factory where I work, it looks the same. It's, people are working, so it's dirty, but otherwise it's a very modern facility.
I was surprised that mainland China and Taiwan were actually trading now.
Yes, I think once kind of the time period when Hong Kong went back under Chinese control, and China saw how much money there was to be made in trade. It kind of opened up doors. So yeah, a lot of the components that we get, it's cheaper for us to get stuff from China. Well, apparently in Taiwan, it's also cheaper to get things from China.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Is the other slide after this one? Okay, before I leave the podium, I just wanted to give everybody an update on the Ottawa Astronomy Workshop Series. We had our second meeting on the 10th of March, and it was another successful meeting. Denny Legault gave us a great lesson in how to find our way around the night sky, and we had rave reviews. So The next one is coming in 2 weeks, Thursday, April 14th. It's going to be on stellar evolution, which is being hosted by myself. And it's the same location as the previous workshops. It's in my place of work, just off Annis Road. If you're interested, contact info is up there. I believe it's also in the monthly newsletter. All the previous workshops are posted, slides and videos at this web address, if you want to check out what we've done in the past. And the other thing I want to put in everybody's ear is May's workshop is going to coincide with International Astronomy Day, which is Saturday, May 14th. And there's a lot of events that are going to be happening in the Ottawa area. I know the OAOG will be doing their sidewalk astronomy again at Chapters in Silver City. OAS is going to have a telescope workshop, so if you need help with your telescope, we'd like you to bring it on down, and we'll give you a hand setting it up and showing you how to use it. And then I'm sure the RASC, they usually have something at the museum as well on that day. So mark May 14th into your calendars for Astronomy Day. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Actually, I'm just going to go back 2 slides. Actually, Jim, I'm really glad you pointed that out. I don't think I would have been able to tell who was who if you hadn't pointed it out. Thank you.
First, I almost changed those titles on Jim, and I just didn't do it.
It's uncanny. It's uncanny. Yeah, I like this. All right, so now we'll move on to the observations. So could we have Jim Thompson? You're right here. Good. Taras Rabatsky, Bob Hillier, Paul Cloninger, and Jupiter Impact. That's new. Oh, of course, I know what that is. Never mind. If those 4 individuals want to come down, Jim's already here. So Taras, Bob, and Paul, just come on down. We'll just go in order. Jim.
Yeah, thought you were getting rid of me. So I don't know about the rest of you, but November, December, January, February were pretty bleak, observing opportunity-wise. But there were a few opportunities to get out. This was in November, the 10th of November. I had to get up really early, around 5 o'clock in the morning, to catch these 3 planets in alignment in the east. They're still fairly low, but luckily the seeing was good, and I was able to get pretty good capture of each. Kind of a 50-50 chance of getting the great red spot in view. I was lucky that morning. I also was pretty happy with, might be hard to tell here, but some good coloration on the moons. Io is nice and orange. Europa is kind of a whitish brown, and Ganymed's a nice brown color. And then Mars and Venus. Mars is really hard. Well, you can see because of the size. Relative to Jupiter, it's hard to see detail on Mars. Maybe it'll be better this summer, but a little bit of detail there. And Venus, also a little hint of something in the clouds. So I was pretty happy with that. This was a mosaic made of shots from the moon I collected on the 22nd of November. I kind of like to make an effort to get these phases after the full moon, because you don't often see them. They come up late at night. So this would have been taken probably around 2 or 3 in the morning. It's a good opportunity to catch details around Chrysium and along this edge, like Atlas and Hercules, which are really nice, complex craters, lots of good detail in the crater floors. And then also on here, Janssen is a great crater as well, but you have to catch it when the terminator is close, and you really can't do that at a nice, comfortable time like 8 in the evening or something. So it's good to, once in a while, make an effort out to catch those. So this was an image made of 8 frames. Each frame is a stack of about 200 frames out of 1,500, and then in a Photoshop combined later. So if you've been out at all, you'll know that Jupiter has been prominent And so that has been my main focus through the winter, is to get some good shots of Jupiter. You can kind of see that I cheated up here and pasted in a picture of Jupiter at a different exposure over top of the one with the moons. I was hoping that would have came out a little less obvious, but damn gamma setting. So various tries through the months of February and March. A couple of nights, like this night actually ended up being pretty good. Good detail in the northern and southern polar regions that I don't normally catch. A couple of times got the great red spot here. I just caught it off the edge here. It was just coming on. Doing planetary work in Ottawa is typically very challenging because our seeing conditions are always terrible. That's why most of the data that I've been able to collect is with the scope in its native F ratio, so no Barlow added. These two nights, it looked like the seeing was better than average, so I put a Barlow in, and I was able to bring out a little bit more detail. This night was probably the best, but usually I don't have a lot of luck trying to go to longer focal lengths. But yeah, all in all, I'm not too displeased with what I was able to get. So these, by the way, all of these images up to here were collected with camera made by ZWO. It's a Chinese company. The model number ASI 185, and I typically collect 1,500 to 3,000 frames in a video, and then use auto stacker to pick out the best 10 to 15%, align them, stack them, and then wavelets in Registacks. The final shot I have is another mosaic. These are all spring galaxy targets that I observed on February 22nd. It was the night of a full moon, which is not the great time to go looking for galaxies, but because we've had so few opportunities to observe this winter, I just did what I could with the conditions. So the full moon was directly overhead. Limiting magnitude was probably around 0 at the horizon and -1 at the zenith. So yeah, it's like being in a parking lot. The only object I could see naked eye in the sky was the moon and Jupiter. So keeping that in mind, I used my Mellencam Extreme camera with a infrared high-pass filter. So this is only infrared light that we're looking at. And it allowed, cut out as much of the lunar glow as I could. And I was pretty happy, actually, with what I was able to see. A good variety of our favorite galaxies. M51 and M63 is probably my favorite, but it's also very challenging to view the spiral arms, and then a number of the others. Now, what really kind of made me excited is when I prepared this slide, I just wanted to see if there's any other galaxies hiding in those frames. And that's kind of dark to see. But I tried to annotate the other galaxies that were visible. So there's a magnitude 15 galaxy up here. I can't read the IC number. IC 4276. There's a number here next to M63. Those are all PGCs. They're all magnitude 16 or dimmer. Really interesting down here. This is in Ursa Major, this unusual galaxy, NGC, sorry, I can't read it.
Top right is 3718, 3729 in the top right.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So this is very close to the bucket of Ursa Major, if you want to go looking for it, of the Big Dipper. So this galaxy, at some point in the past, went by this one and distorted it, so it has distorted spiral arms. But also in the background is this Hickson group. So all these galaxies are many millions and millions of light years behind, and they're all kind of magnitude 14, 15, 16 galaxies. So that's all, I was able to view that on my computer screen, basically real time, during a full moon. So I thought that was pretty good. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Hi, I want to show you a few pictures taken lately and during last year. The first one is derelict group of galaxies. I think I got pretty much, most of what I could have achieved from FLO observatory, the details of the main galaxy in that group, which is NGC 7331. It has a few smaller galaxies around it. I counted like 6, like 1, 2, 3. There is somewhere. It's difficult to say, it's a bit blurry still image, but fainter ones, I think there is like one right here. So it's a group where this main galaxy is 40 million light years away from us. And the only strange thing about this galaxy is that despite the main direction of the arms, the bulge is rotating in the opposite direction. So it's something quite unusual. There is no exact explanation for that, but that's a strange galaxy which has that property. This would be M11, or a wild dark cluster. Consists about 2,900 stars, mostly nicely packed in the center. So those blue ones are young stars. There's many of them, and it's just a nice object. When you point your telescope at it, it's pretty bright because of so nicely packed stars, even though it's an open cluster. Horsehead Nebula, this is composed of quite a few attempts, including some recent, taken with a modified camera. Eric LeMay, thank you for doing that for me. So this is, prominent star here is Alnitak. It's actually like a triple star. It has main star right here and a little bit this blurb here. It's a companion star, but there is yet another star inside this bright image here, which we cannot see. And as you know, this is one of the most prominent identifiable objects in Orion. So the gases and dust created this pattern here, which looks like a horse head, and it's surrounded by this red glow, which again is easy to be taken with a modified camera, and that's hydrogen gas from behind the object. So when it glows, we get the shape of horse head because of dust and gases which are in between us and that red glow. M104, Sombrero Galaxy, it's pretty easy target, it's pretty bright, nice looking. And I had a collection of images from this object from last year. I wanted to improve it a little bit by stacking a few more to get rid of noise. And when I tried to do that, actually something interesting happened. So this was my picture from last year. And when I added subs from this year, I've noticed that there is a little speck right here, which was not present on a picture from a year ago. So it was quite, yeah, thanks, Chris. It's quite a surprise for me. I didn't know what it is. I asked a few fellow astronomers what they think it should be. And it was not until another fellow astronomer, Andrew Brown, used his database, or rather a software called Carte du Ciel, which has about, I guess, hundreds of thousands of objects in a very detailed database listed. So I gave him estimate time when this picture was taken, and it happened to be asteroid called Hydeia. And the asteroid apparently was so common in that area that it moves back and forth in kind of path with a retrograde pattern. So it stays closer to this object. Even now, you still can catch it somewhere, perhaps maybe like over here. But on its way through the trajectory, it made its path through the galaxy itself. Chris, if you don't mind, yeah, thanks. So this is a simulation. It's not my pictures, but after I identified the object, I uploaded the data into Stellarium, and I was able to track down within the span of next few days what the asteroid, where it would go to. So yeah, it was passing right through the core of the galaxy as you saw it. Then it goes this way and comes back in a retrograde motion. And last picture, Mars. It's also taken the same time when that last picture was made, which was March 19th. It's also a composite of quite a few frames taken as video frames and stacked. Mars back then and even now it's pretty low, so it's gonna rise higher and be more visible within next few weeks or months. But this is the best I could have gotten from video frames. Thank you very much.
Just before Christmas, I upgraded the mount in my observatory to a Paramount Mighty mount, so I'm the reason that we've had all this crappy weather for the last 12 weeks. I finally got it dialed in, and for years I've been trying to get a good, decent picture of the Horsehead Nebula, and even though we had some pretty poor seeing, and this night the transparency was all right, but this was a series of 11 images, 10-minute exposures that I was able to collect of the Horsehead before it went behind trees. And I thought it was pretty cool with the rays of light coming off Alnitik. I had never seen that in any image before, certainly nothing I've ever done. And I'm not particularly good with image processing, so this is just stacked and flat-fielded and stretched a little bit. I got to work on my image processing to make it look like a really nice, pretty picture. But I'm pretty excited with what this Paramount mount will do, and what opportunities it's going to afford me to get some good pictures. Thank you.
That's bright. Hi, everybody. I've got a few images for you tonight. Start off with something close to home, obviously the moon. Just to give you a bit of an update, Jim Maxwell, Wolf Luncher, Eric LeMay, and myself have resumed our work on the Smart Scope. We are at the stage of doing a final alignment of the actual mount, making sure that it's as accurately polar aligned as we can there, and that will enable us to commence with some serious deep sky imaging and the work that we need to do on the remote access components that are going to be part of this project. So just wanted to show you a couple of test images that we shot this was a couple of weeks ago after the ice and all that good stuff has melted off the observatory, and we were able to resume operations out there. So just a quick view of the moon here. This was actually through the guide scope of the main scope. And for the following one, we have that view through the main scope itself. The seeing wasn't great. As has been commented on by a couple of the other presenters, we really haven't had a lot of good nights for seeing, certainly in doing high resolution planetary or lunar work. this winter. It's been pretty damn dismal, actually. So hopefully now with the change of the season, the warming of the skies, I'm starting to see a trend where we're getting actually maybe a few more clear skies. So this will hopefully work nicely with our work at SmartScope to enable us to do these final steps to bring it to 100% fully operational status. Yes, it was. That was taken through the main scope there, and that is with the Celestron Next Image 5 planetary imager. So there we go. So this one I shot a couple of weeks ago. As I say, our skies have been, you really got to pick and choose, and you don't get a lot of opportunities there. This galaxy, what was the number on that one again, Chris? Can you go back there? Yeah, 4236. I'm not good with remembering those things. I just took this image actually with a Canon 60DA and a 200 millimeter telephoto lens. I was up exploring the region around Draco there because that's what the sort of the night gave me to do, and it was actually a relatively clear night. I thought this was kind of an interesting shot because I take a sequence of shots and then stack them together to try to improve the noise and the depth of penetration there. So most of the shots were relatively clear. It was a relatively good night. But on a few of the shots, had some thin cloud moving in, and what it did is it haloed the brighter stars in this particular field. So what I would typically do if I see an artifact or something that's not quite the same as the rest of the stack or images, the subs that I've taken, is I just don't include them in the stack. But this one, because of the color of it, and it's not as, it's not quite as apparent here as it would be on a monitor there, but you can see there's quite a fair bit of coloration difference. You got a blue star and a very yellow star, kind of an orangey star up in that group there. So the thin clouds gave me a bit of a halo there, and I thought, I really kind of like the way that looked. I don't tend to add computer-generated artifacts to my images, but when you catch something natural like this, I thought, oh, it looks kind of cool. So I added them to the stack there of the galaxy itself there. So yeah, this is a combined exposure of about 45 minutes. Again, just taken with a 200 millimeter lens. The galaxy itself is about 36 million light years from here.
Did you exaggerate that color?
No.
On the monitor here, it's really...
It's vibrant, eh? Yeah, no, that was because of the thin clouds moving through, and they just kind of lit up because there were longer exposures as well there, so you get the nice color saturation. But no, it didn't boost the color on them at all. It was just basically a stack to reduce the noise there, and it really came through. So yeah, that again, a total exposure of about 45 minutes on that, with a few of the individual subs there, like the stars actually just a few minutes long each. So I was kind of pleased with the way that turned out. All right, the last one. A couple of months ago, I showed you an image of the Crab Nebula that I took through hydrogen alpha filter. The Crab Nebula, as I mentioned at that point in time, is the remnant of a star. Kind of dovetails with our earlier talk on supernova. Is the remnants of a supernova that detonated almost 1,000 years ago and was visible in the daytime sky for several weeks and in the nighttime sky for months afterwards, and recorded in various different parts of the world, various different cultures. Made note of this thing because it was so prominent. So I was trying to complete a narrowband image set. I showed you the hydrogen alpha there a couple of months ago. But again, with the lack of clear skies that we've had, it seems as though I'm going to have to wait until next winter to grab my remaining narrowband images. I was, however, able to get one good night of a full color set. And so this is a full color broadband set of the Crab Nebula, and is certainly my most detailed capture of this particular object. This is about a 3-hour exposure of combined subs taken through red, green, blue, and luminance filters. And you can see a lot of the tenderly detail there. I really like the way this turned out because it really, if I can get the laser pointer working here, it really showed up some of the detail. This was probably the best night of imaging I had all winter long, so I was lucky to be able to get out and image this. But the Crab Nebula itself, as I said, it detonated, the star exploded from our point of view about 1,000 years ago. And in that 1,000 years has expanded to about 11 light years in diameter, still moving out at about 1,500 kilometers a second. So As Al was saying, I mean, these are really forceful explosions. When those babies go off, you don't want to be anywhere near that, because it just, it just whooshes out and basically wipes out everything near it. So this continues to expand. When the star detonated, it formed a neutron star at its core. That neutron star is, you can see there's two of them very close together here. It's the leftmost member there. That neutron star is basically the collapsed core of the star created by the supernova explosion. It's only about 30 kilometers across, but a teaspoon of this stuff weighs about 1 billion tons. So it's highly compact. It's a pretty bizarre and exotic object there, and it's spinning 30 times a second, emitting radiation and radio signals there. And when it was first discovered with our radio telescopes, we thought we had locked onto some alien signal because the pulses are extremely regular. But as it turns out, this was sort of a keystone in uncovering the nature of neutron stars, which are naturally occurring, not alien-generated objects. So the bluish portion, this is I found really interesting here. The bluish region here is actually the gas being pumped up by that neutron star. It's actually synchrotron radiation caused by electrons being sort of blasting out at about half the speed of light and energizing that gas, and then when it relaxes, it releases that characteristic blue glow. So a fabulous object, and as I mentioned a couple months ago, I'm going to take another one like this in a few years, maybe a decade or so, and see if I can capture some of that expansion. That's all I have for you tonight. Thanks a lot.
All right, so this, what we have now is a video, which should be, which might be if it's what it purports to be. It's an amateur astronomer managing to capture an asteroid impact on Jupiter.
You just saw it there, but you'll see it many more times here. Look at about 2:30 on the limb.
That's huge. How many frames is it on there?
I can only tell you what you see going across there.
Okay, so as you saw, that would be a massive impact. Obviously, no.
That's an amateur.
Yeah, no, it's an amateur doing it, and I think for those of us who remember Schumacher leaving 9, I mean, I don't know how much bigger or smaller that would be, but that is certainly a massive impact. Oh, actually, Chris, could you just play it one more time, maybe? So look at it'll be just to the right of the bottom right of the top dark band.
Is this the only person who got this?
No, I don't believe it's the only person. It's widely covered in science news on the internet. We rarely show this kind of thing, but when I saw that, I just, no, it's not an auto member. We got to show it.
Yeah. Well, it's to Garrett Karen Bauer. If you got that, well done to you, sir. All right, so we're moving into we're going to move into the break. Because we're running a bit behind time, we're going to truncate the break a bit. We're probably just going to go 7 or 8 minutes. So just stretch your legs and go to have a quick toilet break if you need it, and then we'll just come right back here. Oh yes, during the break we'll play some, because it's April Fool's, we're going to be playing some funny videos just for laugh gags. You should enjoy it. Chuck, if I could get your help actually. All right, well, let's move on to the second half. This is part 2 of the Geminids talk by Raymond Dubois and Pierre Martin. And today, I believe it's Pierre who's doing most of the talking. So take it away, guys.
Good evening. So last month, Raymond spoke about the experience that we had at the wonderful Comanche Springs Astronomy site in Texas. So we're going to start with a quick recap. So the weather was really unfavorable along the entire East Coast, so we decided to go further south than we did before. So off we go to Texas. So you see all the bad weather. So this is the southern part of the USA was favored for catching the shower. So Texas turns out to be a measly 2,887 kilometer trip or 27-hour drive, one way. But we got there, and what a wonderful place this was. We have already talked about the details on the previous meeting, and we showed you some panoramic images of the site. Well, we're going to show you shortly a close-up of one of the panoramas, and you'll see it actually full screen. And Chris, please go ahead and press the play button. So if you missed the part one of the talk that we gave, you can actually watch it by going back to the RASC website, the meeting video archive that we have, and watch the part two of the previous meeting to see the talk that Raymond gave. So as you can see, this shows you the site from near the observatories where we were, close to where we were set up for observing. So why travel so far to see the Geminids? What makes the shower so interesting? Well, for one thing, it's considered by many to be the finest annual meteor shower. It consistently produces a zenith hourly rate of over 100 meteors per hour. It has a broad maximum that assures that most of the world can actually at least catch a part of the peak time. It's rich in bright, colorful meteors, and they are roughly half the speed of the summertime Perseids in terms of velocity. The shower is also active for the entire night on some of the longest nights of the year in mid-December. So you can actually observe a marathon of Geminids for over 12 hours on the entire night. It's a really good excuse to escape the cold and head down south where you get the warmer temperature. And finally, the parent object of the Geminids, where they came from, is a very intriguing object. And let's take a look at what this is. So 3,200 phaethon. The Geminids are gravelly debris that were shed by this rocky comet. Now, most meteor showers are actually caused by icy comets, but the Geminids are different. They're caused by this asteroid, which is certainly considered to be a rocky object. It was discovered in 1983 by NASA's IRIS satellite. Astronomers quickly realized that the orbit of 3,200 phaethon was such a close match to that of the Geminids that there was really no other explanation. And 3,200 phaethon might be actually a broken object that broke off from the major asteroid Pallas, and that this could have created the Geminid field. But there's another possibility, that 3,200 phaethon is a rock comet, an asteroid that comes so close to the sun that the heating actually scorches the object and creates a trail of debris behind it. So in 2009, the NASA stereo satellite watched 3,200 as it passed only 15 solar diameters away from the sun. On that close approach, phaethon unexpectedly brightened, and that was most likely due to the thermal fracture and ejecting dust. But this sun encounter contributed just a very small fraction of the mass of the Geminids, and this is certainly not enough to stock up the massive Geminid stream, which, according to Bill Cook from NASA, the Geminid stream is somewhere between 5 and 500 times more massive than most of all the other meteor showers of the year combined. So this thing is huge. And a third possibility is that 3,200 phaethon was simply more active in its past in producing dust, that it acted more like a real comet did back in its past. So that's certainly possible. So a little bit on the activity profile of the Geminids. They have a very active a very interesting profile, and that's especially due to the mass sorting effect. And that's what that is. It's an uneven distribution of the particle size within the debris stream. So the debris, the rates rise. I had the laser pointer here. So the rates rise gradually towards a maximum a couple of days ahead, with a gradual slope towards maximum activity with about 120 meters per hour. And this is mostly accompanied by faint telescopic meteors. Some bright ones too, but the majority are faint meteors. And then as we reach the peak, we get a mix of both bright and faint meteors. And then on the descending slope, it's a sharp drop-off. So the Geminids, as soon as they pass maximum, they just shoot right down. And we get a period of what's known to be bright meteors during that time. And I've been wanting to try to catch that period of bright meteors for a long time. So this is also known as the photographic maximum because we can capture possibly more of the brighter meteors. And it's thought to be caused by the Poynting-Robertson effect. This is actually solar radiation slowing down the dust particles in their orbit. It's led to the larger meteoroids to be more common in the outer parts of the core filament of the stream. And that's as the Earth encounters different parts of the stream, we get to see the larger chunks at a later part in the shower profile, which happens to be as the shower is dropping off in rates. So what happened is in 2015, so this past year, the peak of the shower was predicted right in the middle of the daytime for North America. So this might seem as not really good, but in fact, what it actually meant is we had 2 possible strong nights of activity because of the broad activity that's actually quite long-lasting overall for the Geminids. There was the Sunday night, the Monday night, which were looking very promising. So the one I was more interested in was the Monday night, which would place us right into that descending slope in the middle of the night when the radiant was nice and high. So I was hoping to we had a real chance to catch the elusive period of bright meteors. So a little bit on the CMOR, the Canadian Meteor Orbit Radar website is a really good place if you want to check on active meteor showers. So this calculates the radiant point of all the meteors that it detects over the course of a night. And then what it does, it plots it on the chart to show the active radiance. So as we approached the peak, I took advantage of the internet access that we had at the Comanche Springs site to check on the Geminids. And this is what I saw, a really bright hotspot right here that showed that the Geminids were unmistakably active right ahead of the maximum night. So what did we see and photograph? The first night, the peak night, I was actually a little bit nervous because in the early evening hours, it got cloudy. But as the expected cold front swept through, it also got very windy, and this pushed the clouds away and it dissipated them, and the sky then became spectacular. It was just great. So we had the zodiacal light, the Gegenschein were visible, the Milky Way was highly structured. The temperature was a comfortable few degrees above freezing with excellent sky transparency. My limit mag, as I did my counts, I had about 7.2 at the max, and then it dropped off later at night. We had a little bit of a ground fog, which dropped the transparency down a little bit, but it was still really beautiful. So now I will pass this to Raymond. He will show you some of his photo and video results from the first night.
Okay. Thank you, Pierre. Before we get to Pierre's amazing photos, here's some teasers. They're all taken with my D300 at, the information's on the left-hand side. The reddish at the bottom, I think that's way, way out Dallas, way far away. Do you see it just at the horizon, the reddish color? Or it could be the dust from the surrounding area because it's red land around there. You can see how clear the skies are. Look at Orion, pinpoint. So here, I wanted to do some fun. I took a Sony Handycam, played around with the setting into a manual setting, try to get as much of the stars I can see clearly. So if you see on the right-hand side, you see Orion. Now, keep your eyes on the right-hand corner for a meteor will pop up. Chris, do you start that one?
Yeah, it's going.
Okay, thank you.
There it is.
Could you try it again? Because first time, what? Next time, you really cap it. All right. Thank you. All right, let me see. And now it's Pierre's turn. All right.
Okay, there we go. So I had 2 cameras running during the shower. I decided to put one camera in the early evening. That was right before the cloud cover came in. So there you can actually start to see the clouds down below the dome. But I wanted to try to catch the observatory in action and some the other observers that were set up right down here doing some astrophotography. So this is a composite image. It caught the first 8 meteors of the evening on my camera. And this was not tracked, just camera on tripod. Just a simple shot, but you can see some nice Geminids that are coming down towards the western sky. The radiant is all the way on the opposite side. And you have this is the Andromeda galaxy right here. So the other camera, what I did is I positioned it towards the eastern sky, and I had to wait. This was after the cloud went away, and you can see the last bits of clouds that are dissipating in the east. And this, to get my background shot for the composite, it was all about timing. I had to move really quickly at this point because I had in mind, I wanted the horizon in the shot, and I also wanted Orion. But being this far south, the constellations come up really fast in the east, and just a few moments later, Orion would have been out of the frame, and I would have had to change the composition. So this is basically, I took hundreds of exposures. I ran the camera the whole night on the tracking, on the Vixen Super Polaris tracker. And it followed from the east all the way to the west in the morning sky. And all the meteors that were captured in that field of view were added in to this picture. And they were all individually masked and positioned in the right spot on the frame. So basically it gives you the impression of the whole shower over the course of the night. So as you can see, there are many average brightness meteors on the picture, some nice bright ones too. And you can see there, just to point out, Orion is kind of on its side here. There it is with Orion's belt pointed almost vertically. The bright star Sirius, this is Procyon, and Castor and Pollux. Now notice there seems to be actually a third star in the Gemini, but it's not a star, it's a head-on Geminid. That's basically defining the radiant. Here it is right here. This is a meteor that's right on the radiant. Now let's take a closer look at this part of the sky. So we're going to look closely on that area. So a lot of these meteors that you see all around here are really, really short. Those are like a quarter of a degree to half a degree long. They're tiny, like to the naked eye, you would barely see the motion. The meteor that I showed you on the previous picture, this is it. It's barely showing any path. It's almost like a star. The one on the right side, the bright one, is probably a -2 or -3 mag Geminid that you see there. Then the other camera, the one that I had pointed on the dome, I then positioned it over the mount, and I did the tracking, did one initial exposure to get the horizon, and then added on all the meteors that I caught on that shot. And as you can see, not all of them are Geminids. There's one bright, high-velocity sporadic right here that shot out from the east, and it's a little hard to see on the screen, but this meteor has a very vivid color. It starts green and then turns yellow, and this is usually a telltale sign of a high-velocity meteor that's probably twice the speed of the typical Geminids, has much more energy, and shows the color more prominently. And the color of meteors, speaking of color, this is caused by the light emitted from the metal atoms from the meteoroid, such as blue, green, or yellow, as well as the light from the atoms and the molecules of the air, which is red. The visible light produced by the meteor depends on the relative influence of the metallic content of the meteoroid as well as the superheated air plasma. So both effects combine to produce the colors that we see. And then lastly, that streak that you see down here is the International Space Station that I managed to catch by pure chance. I wasn't thinking that it would come by, and it did. And this is Jupiter. Now, just to summarize, the first night, my formal counts, I was in my lawn chair for most of the night, and my formal counts went from midnight to 6:30 in the mornings, about 5 hours of effective time, so not counting the breaks. And at that time, I counted 507 meteors, of which 441 of them were Geminids. All the others were part of minor showers or sporadics. And the Geminid rates per hour that I saw, so this is uncorrected rates, just purely what I saw on an hourly basis, was 98, 107, 93, 85, and then 58 in the last hour when the radiant was sinking lower and the morning twilight was starting, so that dropped the rates off. So it was a very, very active shower. It was very busy. There were moments where we were seeing multiple Geminids per minute, and then a short lull, and then it started over again. It was a lot of action, a really, really nice night. So now let's look at what happened on the second night of observing. So the peak was expected just a few hours earlier. Now remember I said it was expected in the middle of the afternoon. So I was excited to know whether we would be seeing the period of bright Geminids on the second night that we were out. So I was ready to go as soon as the sun went down. We had a thin crescent moon just about here, so it casted a light bluish glow in the sky, which really did not last long because the moon was a very thin crescent with a beautiful earth shine. And it set just about less than an hour later, and we had very dark skies. So once the moon set, I would say the transparency that night was a 5 out of 5. It was just amazing. The limit mag was about 7.0 with my counts, and the temperature just above the freezing mark after sunset. And it was unlike the previous night, which was a bit windy. This night was completely calm, very quiet. It was really nice. Well, this photo, I had a camera pointed over into the western sky, and it caught some of the early Earth grazers that went by. So some of these meteors are actually really long. I was using a very wide 24 millimeter lens. And it was really interesting to see those long meteors that lasted several seconds gliding into the sky. They were not really that bright, so I was thinking, well, I don't know, maybe we missed the period of bright meteors. My second camera, as this was happening, the second camera was on the opposite side in the eastern part of the sky, overlooking Orion rising over the east. And this composite captured 13 of the Geminids. And once again, you have a bit of a bluish cast from the moonlight, and not that bright meteors, some really nice Geminid activity, but I don't know, it wasn't really all that bright. And then mid-evening, a little bit later, as you can see, the radiant is climbing higher in the sky. Orion is now much higher up. And again, some interesting meteors. This one has 16 in this composite. So this camera was actually set up on a tripod. It was not tracking. So this is, I decided to do a number of different composite images at different periods of the night to capture the activity and see what would happen. But then, around 11 o'clock, something happened. It felt like someone flicked a switch and the Geminids started getting a lot brighter. And like, wow, like one bright meteor after another just kept coming. This composite image shows 48 meteors captured in the late part of the evening. The radiant was getting higher. We were seeing a lot more meteors. And sometimes it actually felt as busy as the previous night, which surprised me because remember, we should be on the downward slope of the Geminids, and yet things were really, really busy. It was really interesting. So then in the later part of the night, it was incredible. Like this is what I was hoping to see, and we managed to get it, and even more than what I had imagined. So as the night progressed, it was obvious that we were getting the bright meteor period. It was incredible to see a large number of them, many of which were in the negative magnitude range. And this composite is with 61 meteors in it. So the timing of the bright meteor period was also quite ideal, as the radiant for the Geminids was culminating right near the zenith at about this time. And on this picture, you notice how high Orion is in the winter sky. And just look down here. You know what this is? It's the star, the bright star Canopus, in the southern sky, or the second brightest star in the night sky that we don't see from Ottawa, but you could see it over the horizon. Here's a composite image of the 40 meteors captured in the hours after midnight. And this was with my second camera. Again, you can see some really, really nice activity. These meteors were bright. And in the early morning hours, the Geminids were still plentiful, and we were starting to see a greater number of the fainter meteors again. So we were now passing the bright period. And during the pre-dawn hours, we also get an increase in the sporadic meteor rates. So those that are unrelated to known meteor showers. So at this stage, we're facing into the direction of Earth's movement into our orbit, and we're seeing more of those random meteors. On this composite image, there's 41 meteors. Majority are Geminids, but as you can see, we also got some nice sporadics. Possibly members of other minor showers, but I didn't really figure out where these could have come from. And on this one, as dawn approached, the bluish glow from the zodiacal light is there in the morning dawn. Geminids were still active, but it was clearly dropping fast at this point. So in this composite, there are 14 meteors. So Raymond will now show you some of his fantastic images that he captured on that second night.
Oops, I'm sorry, guys. So here's the first one. What mag would you call that, Pierre?
Hard to say, definitely minus something.
All right. So it's a minus. All right. There's one of the chances that you have positive stuff, it's a minus. Here's another one. A bit more close up, but the same one. Like if you noticed, these are from 3 different cameras. So these are 3 different views. Oops. Okay. Itself. The first one was a D300. Next one was a D700. And this one is from a Fuji S5 Pro camera. And that one's my D700. As you can see, they get really bright out there. So back to Pierre. He wants to compare the 2 nights and explain to it. Thank you.
Okay, before I mention this image, I'll just give you the second night summary from my formal count. That night I was on from 7:30 in the evening until 5 a.m., although I did take several breaks to attend my cameras, take a break for have a soup or things like that. And the actual observing time was about 6.5 hours. So that time I saw 302 meteors. Of those, 246 were Geminids, others being minor showers. And the Geminid rates per hour that second night was 22 and 43, 54, 58, and 43. As many as 30 of the meteors on that second night were in the negative magnitude range. There was 11 fireballs, of which 7 were -3, 2 were -4, there was 1 -5, and 1 -7. That was spectacular. It just lit up the sky. Really bright, vivid colored meteors, blues, greens, and yellows were prominent. However, as I mentioned in the last picture, at the end of the night, the Geminids really dropped like a rock. In the final 40 minutes of observing, I saw only 10 Geminids. So the shower was all but on its way out. So it was really all about timing on that night. So I decided to compare the 2 main composites that I did, put them side by side at the same scale, both images with the same camera, same lens, so it gives you a good idea of what the 2 nights look like. And as you can see, it kind of looks like 2 different showers. The first night we saw much greater numbers of meteors. There's a 246 that I captured on the left side. There's a lot more faint meteors, average brightness ones. And of course, the right one, a lot more of the bright meteors. So it was really interesting to get that experience out of the Geminids. So, of course, when you see bright meteors, it's quite common to see a lingering train, or what looks like a wispy cloud that stays long after the meteor has vanished. So we call those persistent trains, but they're not actually smoke. What happens is, as the meteoroid, there we go, just going to go through. As a meteoroid blasts through the air, it ionizes the gases, stripping the electrons from the atoms. And as the electrons slowly recombine together, they emit light, kind of like the neon signs that we see, or the star-forming nebulae. As the upper-level winds twist and distort the train, sometimes we get some really fantastic shapes. And you can actually have some high-altitude winds, upwards of 100 kilometers in altitude. Trains can last as little as a few seconds, or they can persist for many, many minutes. During the 2015 Geminids, my observations, I had only 5% of the Geminids viewed that actually left trains. That's not actually a lot compared to a shower like the Perseids in August, which have faster meteors. There's more energy involved when they hit the atmosphere, so they will tend to leave more trains. And for this shower, the first night, I actually had only about 3% of the meteors seen that left trains. The second night was a little higher. It was about 8% because of the brighter meteors that we saw. So now what I did is I went through all my pictures and I pulled out the bright meteors that I captured, looked for trains that they left, and I found 29 of them. So I put all these 29 meteors and trains together to create a time-lapse movie that I will show you. And what you're going to see is about 4 hours of actual time compressed into 2.5 minutes for the trains. So here we go. And Chris, please go ahead and start the video. So keep your eyes peeled because these events are subtle and they're fast moving. So keep your eye when you see the meteor. This is a fireball that was off the frame. You can see the train coming in from the right side. That's one of the early evening Earth grazers on the second night. That left a long-lasting but faint train. You can actually see it lingering just slowly in the sky. And these are not pretty pictures. These are really closely cropped, zoomed in, and contrast enhanced. So it's not meant to be a pretty picture, but to show you what actually happened there. This one I like. Watch as this sporadic leaves a train drifting for 30 degrees in the sky, and this one actually lasted 25 minutes. So watch closely on the right side. Look at this train go. And isn't that amazing? That really surprised me because the meteor wasn't all that bright, but it left a really persistent train. Let's watch it again. And you can see other meteors flying into the field as this happens. And
That's a smoke trail from a meteorite?
no, it's a persistent train. So it's the light emitted from the atoms that are recombining. So it's actually the glowing trail that's persisting and drifting from the high altitude winds. It does look like smoke, but it's not.
Oh. Never seen this before.
Hard to see with a typical meteor, but if you get a really good fireball, you're lucky enough to see one, there's a good chance that you'll see a drifting train like this. And if you have binoculars, put them on the area where you saw the meteor, and a good chance you'll see it as well.
Now, you can't actually see that with the naked eye, can you?
You can, if you have a brighter fireball. Like on those, like I mentioned, visually, I saw only 3% of the Geminids that I saw actually left trains. A very small number, and they were all the really bright meteors, mostly on the second night. And in most cases, what I saw naked eye lasted only a few seconds, and then I lost sight of it, while the camera was more sensitive to picking it up more. And I think that's the end. And there's one more thing. I'll pass this to Raymond, who will give you a few closing notes.
Thank you, Pierre. Again, we wish to thank the President, Brian Allen, and their Director of Astronomy, Jeff Barton, for their warm and open generosity at the Comanche Spring Astronomy Campus itself. Now, the fun part. One more thing. Have you ever wondered what Pierre's other passion is when he's down in the U.S.? Come on. Yeah. Quiz time. This is quiz time. Come on. Does anybody else knows? Chris, would you please? Our creamy guy. If Roman will let us, can we have questions?
Sure, one or two.
Oh, we can have 2 questions.
Pierre, how long are your tracked subs on those typically?
The subs, the vast majority are 20 seconds. 20 to 30 seconds in some cases. I kept them short because I was running with as sensitive as possible to capture the meteors. I had the camera at ISO 1600, usually open at f2.0, 2.2, like very fast. And any longer, even under the dark skies of Texas that we were in, you would still pick up the air glow or the distant light pollution. It's amazing how sensitive the cameras were. So I prefer to keep it shorter and get more of them.
I was using 1250 at about f3.5, 3.2, 3.5, because I had a 2.8 lens. And you notice at the bottom, the reddish glow? I think that came from Dallas, which is about 200 kilometers away. There's a lot of lights there. But once you get off the first 10 degrees, the sky is dark, dark, dark. Second question?
Are you going to submit your composites to some of the major publications?
I could possibly.
I think they're worth it.
Oh, thank you.
So no question? Thank you, Roman, for the evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre and Raymond. Excellent images, and I'm glad you had a good trip. All right, so we've moved, I guess, on to the less formal part of the meeting. Rob, Dick, if you want to come down and just give a very brief overview of what's happened here.
There we go. Yes, the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. We're only one center of many, and every once in a while we get together, at least in cyberspace. We used to meet in Toronto fairly regularly, but instead what we do now is to save on money. It's teleconference. And to save even more money, they've constricted the General National Council meeting from an entire day down to 2 hours. So you can imagine it's a rather a whirlwind approach to finding out what the society's doing. Well, it was 2 hours, but it went longer than that. About half the time was spent, about half the 1 hour out of the 2 hours was spent going around from the reps from center to center to center, explaining what they're doing. And so it's actually a good way to find out what the rest of the RASC is up to, but it did take a very long time. There's about 28 centers, and you're limited to about 2 minutes each. Do the math, that's 1 hour out of a 2 hour meeting. Well, you might say that they actually got the priority right because it's about the centers. But then another hour was spent going through the executive committee reports and the board of directors and so on to find out what they were doing for the last third of the year or so. And the remaining non-time was directed to the committees and so on. And what we end up doing, the committee chairs have to submit reports. They're supposedly read. And if there are any motions, then you end up discussing what the motions are about. But we had some committees talking a little bit anyway, so the actual council meeting went on for about 3 hours, 50% longer. To put things in perspective, the committee budgets are about $52,000 a year of your money. So it's kind of nice to know what they do with that kind of money. And the second, I guess the other most important piece of business that's done is actually is from the Finance Committee and talking about the budgets for the coming year. And also how well we did last year. Well, a lot of our income comes from membership fees. It's about $200,000 a year for membership fees. But we also have a lot of investments, and we make a lot of money off the investments when the stock market's doing well. Well, in the past, we made over $60,000 a year with the investments. Sadly, this last year it was down to $9,000, but of course we didn't budget for $9,000. So we actually are very, very tight on money this year. We expect things to pick up so that it'll yield about maybe $25,000 by the end of 2016, but we're still got a deficit budget for this year. So generally speaking, we've got a little bit of a bump in the road, but things are still going quite well. And if you're interested in partaking in some of this, there's a large number of committees that I'm not sure which one it is now. Forward? Back.
You've been on that slide.
There we go. Okay. And that there's a large number of committees and so on. If any of them pique your interest, they'd love to have people to join on the committees and do a little bit of work, especially if you come up with some different ways of doing things, because that's what the RASC is trying to do, come up with different ways of doing things, increase the outreach and so on. If you are getting kind of interested in what the other centers are doing, every year we have a General Assembly. This year it's in London, which isn't too far away, and London, Ontario, and the Londoners know how to party, so it's bound to be a good time. There is a lot of work that goes on, but if you're not on a council, not on a committee and so on, not a rep for the National Council, then there's a lot of time to just see what London has to offer, and there's usually a hospitality suite in the late night that goes on to the wee hours. So if you're interested to attend the General Assembly, visit the website for the RASC. It's rasc.ca, and somewhere in there you'll see a link to the General Assembly, and clicking on that you'll be able to find your way over to find what the schedule is, how much it costs, and you can even register. So I think we're running late, but if you do have questions, I'm prepared to answer any of them, though you have to shout. No shouts. Why am I not surprised? Okay, thank you very much. I'll be around if you have any more subtle for discrete questions later on.
Thanks. Chris, am I talking to this one, or? No, from Pat. Okay, great. I was just asked to make a quick announcement about this. I'll just read the description that I was given. So the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, Night Sky Conservation, is hosting an astronomy course every Friday in April. There will be presentations if cloudy and night sky presentation if clear. If anyone can do scope support for this event, it would be appreciated. Please contact Pat Brown. So if you're interested, please contact Pat Brown. I'm sure they'd love the help. This is something else that's very important that's coming up. There's going to be a...
Mike's gonna cover this.
Oh, Mike, sorry. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Mike, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, come on down.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, I received an email from Randy Atwood, who's our executive director in Toronto, and he had been at an awards ceremony, and he was approached by our current Minister of Science, hoping to arrange a star party on Parliament Hill. So I was trying to think, who could I resurrect, being Easter, to come out and help me with this? So we set up a meeting, which we had today, and Mike is back to join us, and I'll let him fill you in on the details of what transpired.
I tell you, resurrect is the word. I went looking for my wallet and keys to my car and everything. So this is an exciting event. As Gordon mentioned, we were approached by Christy Duncan, and who's the Minister of Science, MP, And she asked us if, she asked the national office if we could offer some sort of a astronomy night event. Well, long story short, based on a conversation that Gordon and myself had today with some members of Christy's team, we're going to offer a event that's going to, on May the 9th, that'll be the observing the Mercury transit, the transit of Mercury across the face of the sun. So a bit of risk there, right? Because there's no backup, obviously. I mean, if it's cloudy, then that's it. We are looking at having indoor events. We are looking at partnering with the Aviation and Space Museum and the Museum of Science and Technology as well. Earlier tonight, I sent off a note to our friend Ivan Semeniuk to make him aware of this event. Maybe we'll see him there as well. I understand they're trying to bring out a number of parliamentarians too, and we're going to try and promote the devil out of this.
Yeah, part of what the minister wanted to do is she's hoping to get all of the parliamentarians, all the MPs, out there before they go in for question period at 2 o'clock. So she's hoping we figured the Prime Minister would be there as well.
So this will be great for in terms of we expect to grab a large crowd over the lunchtime period as well. Obviously, the transit lasts from early in the morning around 7 till about a little after 2. We won't see it at 7 because the sun will be behind the tall buildings. But we're really going to be I'm going to be reaching out to a number of you with solar scopes because this is an event that we don't want to pass up. I expect a lot of media coverage for this, and it'll be pretty exciting. So I'll be. If you have a solar scope, you know I'll be coming. I'll be knocking on your door. So
there's a little more. We don't have all the details on that. That's one of the big ones we're trying to work out. There's more to this. The other part of it is that they still want to do a night star party. So we're probably going to arrange something later in the summer to do an evening star party on the hill. In Randy's discussions with the minister, he was recommending something in next July to tie in as a national event at all the centers across the country. Would be doing the same, observing the same star party all across the country. So with luck, we're going to have 2 evening star parties as well as the Mercury transit. So pretty good publicity.
That's it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I guess we'll make a further announcement at the May meeting. All right, so we're just about at the end. Chris, I'm going to make an executive decision. I'm going to go through the slides fast, and then we can play the video after I'm done the slides. All right, so this is Estelle's pick of the month, Thunderstones and Shooting Stars from the Stan Mott Library. Oh, sorry, this is my weird but true, so I'll go through this quickly. You might recognize that piece of machinery, Skylab. I heard it shouted out. Yep, Skylab, the first space station, launched on the 14th of March, 1973, and re-entered on the 11th of July, 1979. Its re-entry actually caused a bit of a sensation. I don't know, it seemed more international rather than Canada, but there was some international sensation about this thing falling through the atmosphere, and there were some really weird but true things that happened. When it re-entered, it spread debris across a 150-kilometer radius in Western Australia. There by the San Francisco Chronicle, I believe, offered a $10,000 prize for the first person who could bring a piece of Skylab to them. Their rival newspaper offered $200,000 for anyone who suffered property damage as a result of Skylab debris. Coincidentally, the Miss Universe pageant was being held in Perth that year, Perth, Western Australia, and a large piece was displayed at the Miss Universe pageant in Perth on the 20th of July, 1979. But I think the most interesting but weird information is just about to come up. When it landed across that area, the Shire of Esperance fined NASA $400 for littering. The story doesn't end there. The fine was paid in 2009 by a radio host whose listeners raised the money. So NASA is now off the hook for the $400. All right. So just before we get to this Apollo behind the scenes, I'll just quickly go through this. Membership benefits, that's how much it costs down at the bottom. I highly encourage you to join, especially if you've been coming here for a good number of years. It's a great way to support the center, and we'd love to have you. Membership benefits, You can take books out from the Stanmount Library. You can take a telescope out, and you also have access to the grounds of the Fred Lossing Observatory. The observatory and shed itself requires an extra $35 charge. You also get these publications. This is the club information, various people to contact. Our meetings are, as always, webcast and are available for download later. You can download them off this wiki page. Today's audience, Chris, any numbers?
Yeah, 75.
75. So thank you all for coming out, and of course that doesn't include the thousands who are joining us online. Thank you very much. Post-meeting meeting at Gracie's. Would love to see you there. We'll also have, next meeting is Friday, the 6th of May, 7:30 p.m. I guess I'll wish you now, may the 4th be with you. All right, well, thank you very much for coming out. Thank you to everyone who tuned in online, and to those who are downloading it later. Thank you very much for watching. We'll now have again, I apologize that we've gone over time. We'll now have the draw. We actually have a special draw like we did a couple months ago, where we have a telescope for a new astronomer, someone who doesn't have a scope before. So once we're done once we're done these prizes down here, we'll draw for the main, for the scope, and you're kind of on your honor to say whether or not you have a telescope already. So thank you very much. And for those of you who are going to Gracie's, I'll see you there. For those of you who aren't, hopefully I'll see you next month. And thank you all for coming, and thank you for tuning in.